The Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl. They're
Oh
making it
my
out the NFC.
God.
They are making it out the NFC.
Mike McCarthy fired by week 7. And then I think the Dallas Cowboys' entire season turns around from there. I think him giving himself all the play calling duties, I think that was a massive mistake on his part. And I think them firing Kellen Moore is going to prove more important than people are ready to give it credit for. I think the addition of Brandon Cooks was amazing because a lot of people are potentially saying he's washed. I can tell you right now, from everything I watched of Brandon Cooks, he is absolutely not washed. And he still gets open, still creates space. And I think that's completely fair to think that this offense might not take a step back. But in my personal opinion, Mike McCarthy ruins this entire thing, gets fired by week 7, and then the Dallas Cowboys season turns around from there.
My 5-star hot take, man. Listen, Matt, when it comes to Mike McCarthy, I'm not sure why you hate him.
I don't like him.
The Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl. They're making it out the NFC. They are making it out the NFC. And man, it drives me crazy that people think that Kellen Moore was the reason for this offensive success. Mike McCarthy comes from an offensive background. He was an offensive coach. He has been given the credit for developing Aaron Rodgers behind the scenes. Aaron Rodgers last season, when Mike McCarthy got fired after the Packers were 4-7-1, Rodgers completed 62% of his passes, threw 21 touchdowns to 1 interception, had a 99 passer rating. Even in Aaron Rodgers' last season with McCarthy, Rodgers was not bad by any stretch. And the defense ranked 22nd, the offense ranked 14th. For me, Mike McCarthy is kind of underrated as a coach. People think this guy is a scrub. He can't coach. His issue has never been play calling. To me, his issue has always been clock management. Yeah. There have been times with the Packers that bad luck just happens. The point that the first thing I point to is in the NFC Championship game versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks recover an onside kick, and that's why they score. That has nothing to do with Mike McCarthy. That nothing to do with him and what he can do as a coach. I think the Green Bay one year scored 45 points and still lost in overtime to the Cardinals. It was either 42 or 45, one of those, but they scored 40 plus and still lost. So the offense,
game that Larry Fitz scored a touchdown versus Cardinals.
Exactly.
Oh, that was nuts.
The issue has never been the Packers offense when McCarthy was there. It's always been the defense. The defense has never been good enough. The year that they had a top defense, they won a Super Bowl. And this Cowboys defense is the best defense in the league. Like, it's going to be number one. You have Micah, you have DeMarcus. They just drafted Mozzie Smith, who's going to be a great defensive tackle for them. I mean, get us Stephon Gilmore to pair up with Trayvon Diggs. Their secondary is great. They have versatile players across the board. In their offense, I really do think that the missing piece last year was a receiver like Brandon Cooks. Yep. You know, CeeDee Lamb is their best receiver, but last year the Cowboys were, I believe, 26 against man coverage when they lined up on offense. And that's because outside of CD, there's nobody else that can separate. But now you bring in Brandon Cooks. And if Michael Gallup is even a half of what he was back in 2020, I believe it was. I mean, we're talking about one of the best receiving corps in the league. It doesn't even matter that they lost Schultz. You know, I'm a big Tony Pollard fan. I always have been. I just think the Cowboys are primed for a big time year. You know, if they can just get over the hump, they just need to beat the 49ers and the Eagles, which is a tough task. I think they can beat San Fran. The Eagles are going to be a really tough task, but really the NFC is between 3 teams. It's the Niners, Eagles, and Cowboys. And I know people count out the Cowboys every year because Cowboys fans say they're going to make it every year. But this is a year that I'm really balled in on Dallas, and I think they can really make it to Super Bowl. I have a lot of faith in them this year.
I completely agree. Like every single point you said, I left it off my hot takes because I don't even think it's that hot of a take. I think the only reason people would count out the Cowboys is, like you said, they're the Cowboys. That's the only reason. You look at the roster and the players they have, that is a Super Bowl contending team, top to bottom. And like you said, the additions they made this offseason are so important to them. Like you said, adding a guy like Brandon Cooks is literally exactly what the offense needed. Exactly what the offense needed. He's going to be able to win versus man coverage. He's going to be able to make separation. Like you said, make Dak Prescott's life easier, make CeeDee Lamb's life easier, make a Michael Gallup's life easier. We know what Tony Pollard could do. He's one of the, like we've said on previous podcasts, one of the most efficient runners of the football we have in the NFL. He's just going to get an expanded role. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball. Like you said, you have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence who could wreak havoc on the edge. You have a guy like Trayvon Diggs who, he has his flaws, yes, but he's one of the best ball hawking corners in the NFL. And then you get a guy like Stephon Gilmore for practically free, who any flaw you have about Trayvon Diggs, any concern you have, Stephon Gilmore does those things. He's an elite coverage corner.
They complement each other.
Well. I don't know if I'd say they're the best cornerback duo in the NFL because of the guys in New York, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Jets number one. Jets are number one.
I agree.
Completely fair, but in terms of the way they complement each other, I don't know if there's a better cornerback duo in the NFL that makes up for each other's flaws. So, yeah, I think the Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl this year, 100%.
I like Dan Quinn. He's somebody that plays a heavy dose of zone within his defense, and these numbers defensively are worse than I remembered. So Cowboys versus wide receivers in man coverage in the 2022 season. So this is defense. 31st in completion percentage allowed at 69%. They were dead last in touchdowns allowed at 15, and they were dead last in pass rating allowed at 126.8. So whenever the Cowboys went into man coverage on defense, offenses were scorching them. They were really wreaking havoc on them. I know they're a zone-heavy team, but adding a cover corner like Stephon Gilmore, who specialty is man-to-man coverage, that is going to boost an aspect of their defense that has been a deficiency for years. So you make that boost to the defense, you get that juice on offense, and I think, yeah, the Cowboys, they are legit. Like, I don't know why they're getting written off by people. People believe that Dak is worse than what he is, but Dak is a capable quarterback to winning a Super Bowl. He just has to have the right team and have the right type of run, because there's a lot of luck involved in these things too.
So the only reason that I have issue with Mike McCarthy is the fact that everything he's been saying in the offseason has been, I want to run the ball. I want to get back to old school football and stuff. Like, he's like, I want to rely on my defense, as you should. I think you have arguably the best defense in the NFL. But my thing is, you lost a guy who was getting 250 carries, right? And now you have Tony Pollard, and I take nothing away from Tony Pollard. I think he's incredibly talented, but he just broke his foot, and I don't think he's built to have the bell cow type of role. Now, do I think there are other backs there? Sure. You have Rico Dowdle, you have Malik Davis, and of course, Deuce Vaughn, man. I think he's a real player there. I think people are sleeping on Deuce big time just because he's 5'5". I think he's the next coming of Darren Sproles. But
Deuce Vaughn, stand
anyways,
up. Let's go. Kings. Let's get it.
Anyways, I really do think that that's a big problem. The fact that they lost Zeke, and if they want to rely on the run game, you don't really have the players and the personnel for that at this current moment. So I think that might become a bit of an issue. I don't think Tony Pollard is built, like I said, for that 20 to 25 carry range. I thought Zeke was perfect in the role that they required him for. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it ends up working out. It's called a hot take for a reason. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that aspect of their team. I think if they still had Zeke, I would feel very differently about the Cowboys overall.
I just have a hard time believing that the Cowboys are going to have a losing record to the point that he'll get fired, because last year they were winning with Cooper Rush. Like, this defense is going to be so elite that even if the offense is giving you mediocre output, it's going to be a 500 team. So with me is like, this would have to be one of the worst coaching jobs in history for McCarthy to get fired within the first 8 weeks.
So I'm just looking at their schedule, and I see obviously they open up against the Giants. And I personally, it's a home pick. I personally think they lose that game because all the momentum coming into the season for the New York Giants is all there.
Dak owns you guys.
I don't want to hear that right now. We're winning week 1. I don't care. It's in MetLife. It's Sunday Night Football. You start with the Giants, then you have the Jets. It's a possibility that you start the season 0-2 there. And then
It'd also be 2-0 though. They could beat the Jets.
yeah, I agree. But then you have the Cardinals, you have the Patriots, but then you hit the 49ers, the Chargers, and I don't know. I think there's a real possibility you start the season in the first 6 weeks 2-4. And I don't think Jerry Jones is going to be patient much longer, if I'm being entirely honest. I think he's going to have a quick trigger in this situation because, I mean, look, the guy literally has said on multiple different points, he's going to sell his damn soul at this point for a Super Bowl. So,
But if you're trying to be competitive, right? How productive is it for you to fire your head coach 8 games into the season like that? How does that really fix anything
see,
other than just proving an unnecessary point?
but that's
and
what you're
basically
trying to do.
No, but you're kind of at that point, you're basically almost giving up. It's so hard for an interim head coach to step in and win football games, especially when you have a roster that's as talented as the Dallas Cowboys. You need a head coach.
So, yes, while I agree with you in that regard, if it's someone that's been in the building for quite a few seasons and has head coaching experience, I think it's a lot easier.
So who's that?
Dan Quinn. I think Dan Quinn becomes the head coach. So I think that's a great move. I don't know how I feel about it, but I do think the Cowboys would go on a run after that. And I think since you're keeping pretty much the same defensive principles because he's now being elevated, your offense doesn't change because, I mean, well, obviously you have a new offense coordinator. Well, it'd be the same guy, but Mike McCarthy obviously calling plays at the moment. That changes things once he gets fired.
But that's also the point, right? You got you're
changing your offensive
play caller,
principles. Yeah,
you're kicking him out. I don't see it happening.
No, and that's fair, and I get that. Again, that's why it's a hot take.
So it's a pretty.
That's why it's a hot take. But I don't know. I think it's entirely possible that things work out for them, and I just. Maybe the guys just aren't fully believing in Mike McCarthy at a certain point. So maybe it lights a fire under your ass when you see one guy get fired and you go from there.